The sound of the axe slicing through the wood echoed through the forest as I finished my shift. At 48, I had found peace working as a forest ranger in Yellowstone after the divorce that shattered my life 5 years ago. Scott Mills, the man who now spent his days protecting nature and avoiding people, at least until Jennifer came into my life and, without any warning, brought her son along. If you're wondering how a simple park ranger ended up living a story I can hardly speak out loud, hit that like button now. You'll understand why I need to share this with someone. My house is at the southern end of the park, close to the coast. It's a rustic wooden retreat overlooking the ocean, where the only sound besides the waves is the occasional howl of wolves. My routine was simple. Wake up at dawn, check the trails, log any animal sightings, and head back at sunset. The nights belonged to me, usually with some cheap whiskey and an old book. It wasn't an exciting life, but it was mine. When I met Jennifer at a CPR training session for park employees 8 months ago, I never imagined that less than 6 months later we'd be married. She worked remotely as a financial consultant and adapted well to the isolated life. But there was one part of the equation I hadn't fully considered. Lucas, her 19-year-old son who was studying biology at UCLA. "Scott, Lucas is coming to spend the summer vacation with us," Jennifer announced one morning while keeping her eyes glued to her laptop. "It's been a long time since we spent time together, and he wants to see the park." I agreed without hesitation. After all, he was her son, and it would only be for a few weeks. What could go wrong? The day Lucas arrived changed everything. I was fixing the deck when I heard a taxi approaching. When I turned around, I saw a tall young man get out carrying a backpack. His green eyes contrasted with his tanned skin and the brown hair that fell over his forehead. There was something magnetic about his presence that immediately made me uncomfortable. "You must be Scott," he said, extending his hand with a confident smile that revealed perfectly aligned teeth. "And you're Lucas," I replied, noticing how firm his handshake was. "Welcome." Jennifer appeared and hugged him as she took him inside to show him his room. I went back to work on the deck, trying to ignore the weird feeling that had taken root in my chest. During the first few days, I kept my distance. Jennifer spent most of her time locked away in her makeshift office, leaving Lucas and me alone quite a bit. He seemed genuinely interested in my work, asking questions about the local flora and fauna. His curiosity was refreshing. "Could you show me how to track animals?" he asked during breakfast on the third day, while Jennifer was furiously typing on her laptop. That afternoon, I took him along on a nearby trail. I taught him how to identify deer, fox, and bear tracks. He picked up things quickly, his eyes shining with every new discovery. When we stopped for a break by a stream, I noticed how intently he was watching me. "You really love this place, don't you?" Lucas asked, sitting down on a rock. "It's the only place where I feel at peace," I admitted, surprised by my own honesty. "My mom seems happy with you," he commented, tossing a stone into the water. "She deserves that after everything." "After everything what?" "My dad abandoned us when I was 15. It was complicated. Something in that moment created a bridge between us. The shared vulnerability, perhaps. Or simply the loneliness of two men trying to find their place in the world." The following weeks passed in a surprisingly pleasant routine. Lucas helped around the house, we cooked together when Jennifer was busy, and sometimes we went fishing at the nearby lake. He taught me about current music, and I showed him how to fix the generator when the power went out. It was during one of those power outages that things started to change. Jennifer had gone to Seattle for a conference, leaving us alone for 3 days. In the evening, sitting by candlelight, Lucas mentioned that he practiced jiu-jitsu at college. "Can I show you a few moves?" he offered, his eyes lighting up in a way I should have been alarmed by. I hesitated but eventually agreed. We moved the furniture aside in the living room and began with some basic techniques. His young body moved with grace and strength. When he pinned me to the floor, I felt something stir inside me that had been asleep for years. That night, after our impromptu jiu-jitsu session, I took a cold shower trying to wash away thoughts I shouldn't have entertained. When I came out of the bathroom, I found Lucas in the kitchen making sandwiches. "I thought we might need to recharge," he said, sliding a plate towards me. His fingers brushed mine a second longer than necessary. We ate dinner in silence, only the sound of wind rattling the windows and the occasional hoot of owls in the distance. The tension in the air was palpable. Lucas kept his eyes on me between bites, as if trying to decipher something written on my face. I made an effort to steer the conversation towards safe topics. The park, his studies, anything but what was really hanging between us. "Ever think about how different your life would be if you'd taken another path?" he suddenly asked. The The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? Like, if you hadn't gotten divorced? Or if you'd chosen to live in the big city instead of out here in isolation? I took a sip of water to buy time. I think everyone wonders about that sometimes. But I'm happy with my choices now. Even with the limitations? Here you seem restrained. His words seemed to have a double meaning, testing my boundaries. Not all limitations are a bad thing, I replied, standing up to wash my dish and ending the conversation. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of hammering. I found Lucas fixing some loose boards on the porch, shirtless despite the cool morning breeze. Beads of sweat rolled down his chiseled chest as he worked intently. You didn't have to do that, I commented as I helped myself to some coffee. I wanted to repay your hospitality, he answered with a smile. Plus, I like working with my hands. I watched his technique, impressed. Where did you learn to do that? I worked on a house building project for underprivileged families last summer. I learned the basics. He paused, wiping the sweat from his forehead with his arm. I just wanted to show that I can be useful. There was something vulnerable in his voice that belied his confident posture. For a moment, I saw only a kid looking for approval, not the alluring young man I feared. You're welcome here, Lucas. You don't have to prove anything. He smiled, but there was a shadow in his green eyes. It's strange, you know? I never had a real father figure around. My biological dad disappeared when I was a kid, and all the other men my mom brought home never lasted very long. The comment made me uneasy, reminding me of the responsibility I should have as his stepfather. I spent the rest of the day avoiding being alone with him, busy with maintenance tasks along the property lines. By evening, dark clouds were gathering on the horizon. The weather radio announced a heavy storm approaching the coast. We closed all the windows and checked our supplies: flashlight, candles, water, non-perishable food. Standard procedure for folks living as isolated as we were. The storm hit hard after dinner. Lightning flashed across the sky at increasingly short intervals, followed by deafening thunder that made the whole house shake. Rain pounded the windows as if trying to force its way in. I was checking for leaks in the living room ceiling when the lights flickered 3 times and left us in complete darkness. I lit a few candles and placed them strategically around the house. When I returned to the living room, Lucas was curled up on the sofa, his eyes wide with every thunderclap. Are you okay? I asked, noticing his quickened breathing. I've been scared of storms since I was a kid, he admitted, sounding genuinely embarrassed. It's stupid, I know. It's not stupid. We all have our fears. A particularly strong clap of thunder made him jump from the sofa. I instinctively placed my hand on his shoulder to calm him. The contact sent an electric jolt through my body that had nothing to do with the storm outside. Scott? His voice was barely a whisper. Can I sleep in your room tonight? I don't care if it's on the floor. I just don't want to be alone. Every alarm bell in my mind was ringing. I should have refused. I should have set clear boundaries. Suggested another alternative. Of course, I found myself saying. We prepared an improvised mattress on the floor next to my bed. We lay in silence, with only the sound of the storm filling the space between us. I was painfully aware of his presence just a few feet away. Scott? His voice pierced the darkness after nearly half an hour. Are you awake? Yeah. Can I ask you something personal? I hesitated. Depends on the question. Have you ever felt something you knew you shouldn't feel? My heart raced. The question hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Lucas, I think we should try to sleep. Please, he insisted, his voice now closer. I realized he had moved to the edge of the mattress near my bed. I need to know that I'm not alone in this. In what exactly? I asked, already knowing the answer. In this feeling. This thing between us that we pretend doesn't exist. A flash of lightning briefly illuminated the room, revealing his face turned toward me, eyes shining in the dark. You're my wife's son, I replied in a hoarse voice. And I'm almost 30 years older than you. That answers my question, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. You feel it too. The next thunderclap was so strong it made the whole house shake. Lucas let out a frightened sound, and on impulse, got up and sat on the edge of my bed. Just until the storm passes, he explained, trembling slightly. I should have said no. I should have gotten up and gone to sleep on the sofa. I should have done anything except what I did, which was to step aside and let him lie down next to me. We lay there, acutely aware of how close our bodies were, his warmth seeping through the thin fabric of our t-shirts. The rain continued relentlessly outside, but now it seemed distant compared to the storm building inside me. I've been thinking about you, Lucas confessed, his voice so soft I could barely hear it over the rain. "Since the first day I arrived. Lucas, we can't." "Why not?" He turned to face me in the half-light. "We're both adults now. You're practically a kid, and I'm married to your mom. I'm 19, legally an adult. And what about my mom?" He paused, sighing. "Do you think she cares? She barely leaves that office. You two barely even talk." There was truth in his words, which made everything even harder. Jennifer and I had married quickly, more for convenience and loneliness than for a passionate love. In recent months, we'd both been living in our own separate worlds, sharing nothing more than the same roof. "Even so, there are lines we shouldn't cross," I began. I didn't finish my sentence. In the dark, his lips met mine, tentative at first, then with an urgency that awakened something wild inside me. My mind screamed to stop, but my body answered a more primal call. His hands roamed over my chest, sliding down to my waist. When I finally found the strength to break the kiss, we were both breathless. "Lucas, this is crazy. We have to stop." "You want to stop?" he asked, his eyes locked on mine even in the darkness. I didn't answer. I couldn't bring myself to lie. His hand slipped under my t-shirt, his fingers tracing patterns on my skin that sent shivers through me. Every touch was like liquid fire, consuming the little reason I had left. "Let me show you what I want," he whispered into my ear, his warm breath sparking a wave of desire I could no longer contain. What happened next felt like a fever dream. Our bodies came together in an ancient dance of desire and discovery. His young hands mapped every inch of my skin as if he were an explorer, charting unknown territory. My fingers tangled in his hair as our mouths rediscovered each other with a renewed hunger. It was like diving into deep, dark water, knowing there was no turning back. The darkness of the room became our accomplice, hiding what the daylight would surely condemn. Every sigh, every forbidden touch led us deeper into the abyss we had created. Lucas moved with a confidence that straddled the line between innocence and experience. His young, firm, and warm body against mine made me feel things I hadn't felt in years. It was as if every nerve in my body had awakened from a long slumber, hypersensitive to every caress. When we finally joined completely, it was like two pieces of a forbidden puzzle clicking into place. We moved in sync, as if we'd been rehearsing that intimate choreography our entire lives. The pace quickened along with the storm outside, each thunderclap marking a new level of pleasure I never knew was possible. We reached the peak together, like a wave crashing violently against cliffs after traveling across the entire ocean. His name escaped my lips like a prayer or a curse. Maybe both. We collapsed side by side, sweaty bodies and minds momentarily emptied of any coherent thought. Reality slowly returned with the softening rain. The weight of what we had done began to settle on me like a gravestone. "Don't regret it," Lucas murmured, as if he could read my thoughts. His hand found mine in the dark, our fingers intertwining. "Don't ruin what just happened." I sat in silence, unable to express the storm of emotions surging through me. Guilt, shame, fear, but also a satisfaction and completeness I hadn't felt in years. It was like being in both heaven and hell at the same time. We fell asleep like that, our hands still intertwined, while the storm finally faded away, leaving only the distant murmur of thunder. I woke up before dawn, finding Lucas still sleeping peacefully beside me. His relaxed face in sleep made him seem even younger, a painful reminder of the age difference between us. I quietly got out of bed and went to the bathroom, standing under the shower for what felt like ages, as if the water could wash the guilt from my skin. When I got back to the room, he was awake, sitting on the edge of the bed with just a sheet covering his waist. The weak morning light streamed through the window, highlighting his profile. "Good morning," he said, with a smile that seemed oddly innocent after everything we'd done. "Lucas, about last night?" I began, not quite sure what to say. "It was amazing," he finished, standing up and coming closer. The sheet fell away, and it could be even better now that it's not so dark. I looked away, battling the temptation. "We need to talk about this. What we did. It cannot happen again." He laughed, a light, carefree sound that didn't match the gravity of the situation. "Do you really believe that? Because your body is saying something else." I knew he was right, to my shame. My body was betraying me by responding to his proximity, completely ignoring the protests of my conscience. "We have 4 days until my mom gets back," he continued, his fingers drawing patterns on my chest. 4 days to explore this. No interruptions, no guilt. And then, when she returns, do we just pretend nothing happened? Or maybe we'll discover that what we have is stronger than any artificial family obligation, he suggested, his green eyes fixed on mine. Maybe we'll find out this is real. His words were like both poison and honey, terrifying and seductive at the same time. A part of me knew I should end it immediately, pack my things, and get away before Jennifer returned. Another part, more primal and stronger, wanted to see just how far this forbidden path could take us. 4 days, I repeated, feeling the weight of those words. 4 days for us to be just ourselves, he murmured, his lips now inches from mine. No labels, no rules. When our lips met again, I knew I was lost. The line I swore I'd never cross was already behind me last night, and now I found myself in entirely uncharted territory, without a map or a compass. We spent the morning in bed, rediscovering each other in the daylight. Every touch, every kiss felt different now, imbued with the knowledge of what we were doing and that delicious sense of forbidden thrill. Later, we prepared breakfast together in the kitchen, moving around the space as if we were dancing a secret tango. A touch here, a glance there, small moments of stolen intimacy as eggs fried and coffee brewed. We sat on the porch to eat, watching the world washed clean by the previous night's storm. The air was fresh and crisp, filled with the scent of wet earth and vegetation. Birds sang in the nearby trees, celebrating the return of the sun. "What are you thinking about?" Lucas asked, watching me over the rim of his coffee cup. "About how everything seems different this morning," I replied honestly, like the world changed overnight. He smiled, a smile that carried secrets too old for someone so young. And it did. Those 4 days we spent together felt like living in an alternate reality, a bubble out of time where society's normal rules didn't apply. We walked along the deserted beach at dawn, our fingers discreetly entwined when we were sure nobody could see us. We cooked elaborate meals together, the accidental brush of our bodies in the small kitchen creating a delicious tension that often brought us back to the bedroom. At night, we talked for hours lying in bed, sharing secrets and vulnerabilities I'd never revealed to anyone. Lucas told me about his real father, a man who abandoned him so completely that not even a photograph remained. He spoke about growing up watching his mom bring one man after another home, none staying long enough to put down roots. "Maybe that's why I am this way," he confessed one night, his head resting on my chest. "Maybe I look for in older men what I never had from my dad. That only makes this all the more wrong," I replied, stroking his hair. He lifted his head, his eyes meeting mine in the half-light. "Or maybe it's exactly what we both need. You were searching for something too when you married my mom, weren't you?" I couldn't deny it. Jennifer represented stability after years of loneliness, a safe harbor, but there was never the intensity I felt with Lucas. It was like comparing a controlled fireplace with a wildfire. Both gave warmth, but one threatened to consume everything in its path. On the morning of the 3rd day, I woke to find Lucas sitting on the edge of the bed, gazing pensively out the window. The rising sun cast a golden halo around his profile, highlighting every curve and angle of his youthful face. "Are you okay?" I asked, reaching out to touch his back. He slowly turned, his green eyes carrying a seriousness I'd never seen before. "We need to talk about what happens next." Those words made my stomach drop. Our bubble was about to burst, reality soon to invade our little world. "She's coming back tomorrow," he continued, "and we have to decide what to do." I sat on the bed, running my hands over my face to shake off the last traces of sleep. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I can't imagine going back to normal, pretending that nothing happened. Returning to the university knowing you're here with her, living a life that has nothing to do with what we experienced these past few days." His tone held an urgency that alarmed me. "Lucas, what exactly are you suggesting?" "Come with me," he said simply, as if proposing a casual outing rather than dropping a bombshell on our lives. "When I get back to Los Angeles, come with me." I laughed nervously, thinking he was joking. But his face remained serious, his eyes unwavering. "You can't be serious," I replied. "I have a life here, a job, a marriage. A marriage of convenience with a woman who barely notices you," he shot back. "A job you could get at any park in California. And a life, well, what kind of life is this, Scott? Hidden away from the world, drinking alone every night until I show up." His words hit me hard because they carried truths I'd been avoiding. Jennifer and I were like two ships that occasionally crossed the same harbor. My work, though rewarding, could be done in any natural reserve in the country. And as for my life, it was more like mere existence. "It's not that simple," I argued, getting up and starting to dress. I needed some physical distance to think clearly. You're at the start of your life, Lucas. You have college, friends, an entire future ahead of you. What would you do with a nearly 50-year-old man dragging you along? A man who betrayed his own wife, too? I'd finish my studies as planned. You'd find work at some reserve over there. We'd have a place of our own. He spoke as if outlining a meticulously crafted plan, not an impulsive fantasy. As for my mom, she'd move on, like she always does. Believe me, she'd get over it faster than you think. I stepped out onto the porch, needing some fresh air. The morning sun was already warming the wooden floor under my bare feet. Out there, the world continued its normal course, oblivious to the turmoil forming inside me. Lucas followed me, stopping just a few steps away. Am I scaring you? Yeah, I admitted. Because this is insane, Lucas. You know that. Crazy compared to what we've already done? Crazy compared to falling for my mom's husband in less than a month? The word falling hung between us like a fragile bubble, iridescent and full of every possibility and impossibility of our situation. You're not in love with me, I finally said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. You're mixing up physical intensity with something deeper. It's normal for someone your age. His face hardened, a shadow passing through his eyes. Don't treat me like a child. Not after everything we've shared. Sorry, I sighed, feeling the weight of every wrong decision that had led me to this moment. But you have to understand that what we experienced here, it was like a dream, and dreams end when you wake up. It doesn't have to be that way, he insisted, coming closer and holding my hands. We can make this our reality. We just have to be brave. His imploring eyes reminded me just how young he really was, despite the maturity he showed in so many ways. His life was only just beginning, full of possibilities and uncharted paths. I had lived long enough to know that some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. Let's save that conversation for later, I suggested, squeezing his hands before letting go. Let's enjoy the time we still have. I saw the disappointment on his face, but he nodded, accepting my temporary deflection. Whatever you want. We spent the rest of the day trying to recapture the lightness of the previous days, but now there was a weight between us, an unanswered question hovering over every interaction. We had a barbecue on the beach, swam in the cold ocean, made love under the stars, but everything carried a tinge of farewell that we couldn't ignore. On the morning of the last day, I woke up before him and watched him sleep. His relaxed face, long lashes resting on his cheeks, the gentle rise and fall of his chest with every breath. Memorize him like this. A voice whispered in my mind. This is the end. I made my decision during those silent pre-dawn hours, weighing each possibility against the harsh reality of our lives. When he finally opened his eyes and met mine, something in my look must have told him the answer. You're not coming with me, he stated. It wasn't a question. I can't, Lucas, I said softly, stroking his face. What we did was extraordinary. It changed something fundamental in me, but it can't go on. He closed his eyes for a moment, taking in the impact of my words. When he opened them again, there was a resolution there that hadn't been before. Then it's best if I leave today, he declared, sitting up on the bed. I'm going to call a taxi and get a hotel in the city. I'll tell my mom I wanted to explore the area on my own before returning to college. You don't have to go yet, I protested, although I knew he was right. Jennifer isn't back until tonight. And how do we spend the day? Pretending nothing changed? As if I didn't just offer my heart to you and you just turned it down? His voice trembled slightly, the first sign of fragility I'd seen since our conversation started. I had no answer for that. He was right. Any more time together would only prolong the inevitable, adding another layer of pain to the separation we had to face. I watched in silence as he packed his things, moving efficiently and controlled in a way that contrasted sharply with the emotional turbulence I knew he was feeling. In less than half an hour, his bag was ready, every trace of his presence in my room carefully erased. The taxi arrived sooner than we expected. We stood on the porch, side by side but not touching, watching the dirt road that led back to civilization. That wasn't just an adventure for me, he finally said, breaking the heavy silence. I want you to know that. It wasn't for me either, I admitted, finally allowing myself that small truth. But sometimes the most significant things in our lives are also the briefest. He smiled, a sad smile that didn't reach his eyes. Always so philosophical. The taxi slowed to a stop in front of the house, its engine purring softly. The moment had come. Can I have one last hug? He asked, his voice nearly a whisper. I nodded, unable to speak through the lump in my throat. His arms around me were strong and safe, his familiar scent as if I'd known him for years rather than weeks. I closed my eyes, memorizing the sensation, knowing I'd have to live with that memory for years to come. When we pulled apart, his eyes were moist, though not a tear fell. "Goodbye, Scott. Goodbye, Lucas." I watched as he loaded his bag into the taxi and got in without looking back. The car slowly disappeared down the winding road, taking with it the brief and intense chapter of my life that we'd written together. I went back inside, now strangely empty and silent. The hours dragged as I wandered through the rooms, seeing ghosts of our moments together on every surface. There in the kitchen, where we'd made pancakes and laughed when the batter splattered on the ceiling. There in the living room, where he showed me jujitsu moves that led to our first intimate contact. There on the porch, where we shared secrets under the starry sky. Jennifer arrived at dusk, coming home with stories from her conference and questions about how the week with Lucas had been. I played my part, recounting half-truths about park walks and fishing trips, leaving out everything that really mattered. "Where's Lucas?" she finally asked, noticing his absence. "He decided to spend his last few days exploring the city before returning to college," I replied, the words coming out as if rehearsed. "He said he'd call you tonight." She nodded, apparently unsuspecting. Why would she? In her mind, we were just stepfather and stepson, two people connected through her, not by some intense, forbidden attraction of our own. That night, lying next to my wife, who slept soundly, I stared at the ceiling and realized that a part of me had left in that taxi. The part that, for 4 days, allowed itself to be completely authentic, free from the shackles of social expectation and conventional morality. What Lucas and I shared was wrong on every traditional level. I betrayed my wife. I crossed boundaries that should never have been crossed. I probably caused emotional harm to a young man still forming. And yet, I couldn't completely regret it. Because in those brief moments, I felt more alive than I had in all my previous years combined. Life went on. Jennifer and I continued our dance as two strangers sharing a home. Lucas went back to college, and from what I gather through occasional comments from his mom, he's doing well. We haven't spoken since that farewell on the porch. It's probably for the best. Sometimes, on the quietest nights, when I'm alone on the porch watching the stars, I allow myself to revisit those 4 days in my memory. Not as an indulgence, but as a reminder that, for a brief moment, I truly lived something real and transformative, even if it was born from the forbidden. If you've read this far, you're probably wondering if I'm a monster or just a weak man who gave in to temptation. Maybe I'm both. Or maybe we're all more complex than the categories society tries to put us in. This is the first time I've told this story to anyone. I've carried this secret for almost a year now. An invisible weight that sometimes threatens to drown me in guilt and other times seems almost worth it for the memories it gave me. If you're watching this video, it means I've finally found the courage to share my story, even anonymously. I'm not looking for absolution or judgment. I just needed to get these words out, as if by sharing them, I could finally begin to process what happened and move on. The truth is, I'll never forget those 4 days with Lucas. They are etched into my soul as a reminder of the price of authenticity and the pain of renunciation. If you're wondering whether it was worth it, I don't have a simple answer. I only know that those moments of genuine connection, however brief and forbidden, reminded me that I'm still capable of feeling something deep, even after years of emotional numbness. Until next time, if there is one. Thanks for listening. Thanks for not judging. Or maybe you are judging, and that's your right. Either way, for a brief moment we shared a connection through this story, and maybe that's enough.